Some of the motion designers that I work with charge up to $1,000 a day. I know, mind-blowing, right? Well, there's definitely some things that you should consider when trying to raise your rate. So in this video, I'm going to teach you when the best time to raise your rate is, how to justify your new prices, and the best approach to raising your rate. So the hardest thing to know when you're thinking about raising your rate is, when is the right time to do it?
Well, how am I supposed to know?
It's kind of impossible to know these things, but there's a few questions that you should be asking yourself to help you to figure this out. So the first question is, do you have more inbound inquiries than you can actually handle? This is a good sign that you should probably be putting your prices up, because this means that people love working with you, you've got new leads and potentially clients coming back to you an awful lot. If this is the case, then please do try and raise your rate, because even if you lose a few of those clients, you're still going to have enough inbound inquiries to have consistent work. And the second question is, do your clients ever push back on your rate? You actually want to be in a sweet spot where they are most of the time negotiating with you, because usually this means that you're charging kind of around the right amount. If they're always saying, yep, let's work with you straight away, then that probably means that you're not charging enough. It is their job to negotiate, and it's their job to get the best price. So if they're saying yes to you straight away, it's probably a bad thing, and you should probably be raising your rates. But if they're negotiating with you most of the time, then it probably means that you're in the sweet spot. But if they're always negotiating with you and they're always saying that you're too expensive, then maybe you are a little bit high, but it's rare that I find this. And usually what happens is you should just be looking for some bigger and better clients.
No more tears. We're on to bigger and better things.
So next up, I want to talk about the best approach to raising your rate. Now, some people think that it's best to not mention that you're raising your rate until you get a new project. This definitely is another option that you can do. So when the client next comes back to you, you can definitely talk to them and say, hey, look, this is my new rate that I'm charging now. And I think that that is perfectly fine. But if you do want to give your clients a little bit of a heads up, let's talk about how you can do that in an email. Now, the first thing you should do in an email is thank them for any work that they've given you, because I think it's really important to thank your clients and show them that you appreciate working with them. Now, the next bit is highly debated, but if you want to, you can explain a reason why your rate is going up. Now, I'm going to talk about ways to justify your rate later on, but some people argue that maybe you don't need to justify it and you can just say, hey, look, this is my new rate. I really hope that we can work together in the future, that kind of thing. I kind of like this approach because I don't really feel like you should have to justify your rate, but especially if it's a long-term client that you really like working with, you might want to give them a little bit more explanation. I think that raising your rates in January in the new year is a great idea, because then you can say, hey, look, this is my rate for this new year, and it kind of makes perfect sense. And usually most clients will accept that. So a way to justify your rates is potentially comparing your rate to other going rates in the industry. Now, I think this works the best if you're working with a client quite often, like maybe more on a weekly basis or something like that. If you're working on a project per project basis, I don't really think this works as well, especially because each project's probably going to be different and you're going to charge each project as a different rate anyway. But I think potentially if you work with a client on a monthly basis, you have some sort of retainer with them and things like that, or you're working with them more on an hourly rate, then I think potentially you can use this and you can say, hey, look, I've seen this is what other motion designers are getting paid. I believe that I should get paid the same. So this is going to be my new rate going forward. So like I say, do be careful about these ways of justifying your rate, but hopefully this is giving you some different ideas based on the types of clients that you're working with. Another great way that you can justify your rate, especially if you're working with these clients on a long-term kind of basis, is to show them the results that your work has helped them to get in their business. Now, I think this works very, very well if, for example, you're working with a direct client on a frequent basis and your videos are really helping them to gain more results in their business and to make more revenue. If you can show them and you can track that, this is a really, really good way to show them that your new rate is meaningful and that you really deserve that rate. So however you decide to approach this raising your rate with your clients, I definitely recommend that you raise your rate with new clients first. This is a good testing ground to see how much pushback you're getting on it, and then you can go back and update your rate with your past clients as well. So it's really, really important to track each rate with your clients, especially if you're updating a rate with your new clients and you haven't yet updated that rate with your old clients. So I usually put what rate I'm charging each client into my CRM so that you don't get into any tricky situations. So remember, your CRM is your client relationship manager. You can obviously use a simple spreadsheet, but we also have a client relationship manager in our course Client Quest. So if you want to check out that course, I'll leave the link below this video in the description. Now, one thing you absolutely mustn't do when you're raising your rates with your past clients is send a mass email out to every single client. I really, really think that it's best to personalize each email, talk about how you appreciate working with them, potentially talk about past projects, and then talk about how you would love to work with them in the future. I think sending a mass email really sends a bad signal, and I would definitely encourage you to talk to each client on an individual basis, whether that's one certain time in the year when you raise your rates, like for example in January, or whether it is per project when the clients come to you. Now, just as a quick side note here, if you're doing project-based pricing or value-based pricing, I think raising your rate becomes a little bit unnecessary because you are charging per project for the project fee, or also value-based pricing is kind of going to vary per project and client anyway. So I don't think there's any reason for you to go out there and announce that this is the new rate that you're going to be charging. So I think you can just assess it per project. If of course then they come back to you and say, okay, why is this more expensive than it was last time? Then you can explain that to them. If you want to learn more about value-based pricing, then I do talk about it in a video, and I'll leave a link below this video in the description. So I want to talk about a few lessons that I've learned over my freelance career when it comes to raising rates. So the first thing to remember is you're always going to be too expensive for someone. So you may lose some clients if you raise your rate, but remember, if you lose some clients, it frees you up and you have more time to look for bigger and better clients. So you can more easily make the jump from lower paying clients to higher paying clients, and you're probably getting paid more too. So potentially you're doing less work for a kind of similar amount of money. Also, what I found is the best clients are usually the people that pay the most. It might sound obvious, but the best clients that I've worked with were the ones who paid me the most. They appreciated the value that my work had, and they also usually gave me a bit less feedback, and they were the nicer people to work with.
I think I might actually be in love.
To make sure you're not underselling yourself, you should use my 3-point pricing structure. Now, how this works is you're going to think about the ideal rate that you would like to be paid, and that is your middle rate. Then what you're going to do is you're going to charge a little bit higher than that. So you're going to tell the client a little bit more than the ideal amount that you want to be paid, because this gives you a little bit of negotiating room, and it can really, really help, because usually they're either going to say yes to your higher rate or they're going to negotiate with you a little bit. Remember, we want them to do that. And then you're going to get your middle rate, which is your ideal rate. Then also what you're going to think about is, what is your lowest rate, or what is your baseline rate? And this is a rate that you're not going to go below. So when you're negotiating, it makes it really easy, because you know if the client goes beneath that rate that you will not take that job on. And this really helps us to get paid what we're worth and to charge higher prices. So I recommend using my 3-point pricing structure. And if you want to learn more about pricing, you should watch this video next.